Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. Today is going to be a little bit of a different video. Next week I turn 30. I don't know how that has happened. Feels like yesterday I was 17. But anyway, because of that, I thought it might be a nice idea to do 30 books to read before you're 30. So these are going to be all the books that I think have taught me something in my teens or my 20s that has made me a better person or a stronger person, a wiser person, any of that kind of thing. Books that are impactful with strong themes and strong messaging. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why you should read them as well. If you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe and drop a comment below as well telling me a book you would recommend someone reads before they are 30. But otherwise, let's get into the video. Okay, so I'm gonna theme these recommendations by genre so that if you're not interested in a specific genre, you can skip on to the next one. So the genres will be in the description below so that you can find the ones with the recommendations you're interested in. The first genre I'm gonna go through is young adult books. First, we have a very battered, very destroyed book that I have read too many times to remember, and that is Looking for Alaska by John Green. This was my favourite book as a teenager. It's contemporary YA fiction, a coming-of-age story essentially about Miles, who is a teenager that has always felt he didn't fit in. His life's boring, he's lonely, he's isolated, and so he goes to boarding school in hopes of having like a great big adventure. And there he meets two friends, the Colonel, which is a nickname obviously, and then Alaska, real name. Alaska is chaotic, she's wild, and he really admires her and obviously ends up liking her as well. The book deals heavily with themes of grief and mental illness, and it just was really poignant to me as a teenager, understanding those themes in a way that was accessible for my age range. It really changed how I thought about fitting in as well, and it was just like the perfect story for a very difficult time of your life, essentially. Next YA book is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. This is dark academia, fantasy and romance, and it's not necessarily gonna like smack you on the head thematically with things that will teach you life lessons, but it deals with misogyny in academia, and it also deals with mental illness. Effie's a very unusual female main character for a fantasy book as well. She's not necessarily super out there, super strong, super badass. She's a much softer, introverted character. And so this is a book that I think girls who will relate to that should read. We also don't have a typical brooding, like great big love interest as well. He's very geeky, soft, the same as her essentially. And so I think this shows an important part of academia and also shows different personality types that aren't often represented in fantasy as a genre. Simon versus the Homo sapien Agenda. I read this when I was a lot younger than I am now, and it was one of the first YA books that introduced me to what it was like to be queer. I'm not queer, so it was important that I expand my reading experience so I could be an ally to the LGBTQ plus community, and this book really did that, again in an accessible way. It's a really great coming of age story and just one that expands diversity in terms of reading, which I think we should all do. The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Again, thematically, it's not like it's the most insane book that's going to change your life, full of words of wisdom. It's a YA fantasy, political fantasy with a very small romance subplot, but there is no female character in the young adult fantasy space that will teach you tenacity and intelligence like Jude does. She is so intelligent, so logical, so strong, so badass in every way possible. Jude's also like a bit of a misfit and doesn't really fit in, and her family life is not the best, so she has such strong resilience. So all round there's just things that you might relate to but also learn from her specifically as a character. She's just such an admirable female main character. I highly recommend you read her if you are young. I will say first book is a bit slow. Second and third book were 5-star for me, so it is worth pushing through, and it's not that big either, so you'll get through it quickly. Legendborn, one that anyone of any age should read, because I've only been reading these in the last couple of years and they are like a 5-star series for me. Absolutely phenomenal books. The first book deals with Brie, who has just lost her mum, so it definitely has strong themes of grief, which is relatable and helpful to many people just in itself. But then as the story continues, we also get to see her experience in a prestigious, privileged school as one of the only Black people there. And it's rooted in the Deep South in America, so we have themes of racism and it flashes back to slavery. It's a very hard-hitting read in places, but it's so important. It just teaches me things about the Black experience that I will never have to go through, and helps me empathize with the discrimination that Black people might face or the trauma that they have gone through historically. It's a really great series. There's tons of found family, magical powers, loads of resilience, loads of strength. It's just a great series all round, but specifically how it talks about the Black lived experience is why I think everyone should read it. The Hunger Games. Pretty sure by now that everybody has either read it or watched the movies, but just in case, there is literally no better dystopian YA book or book series than these. These are the blueprint, the OG. They are incredible. They are, you know, adapted into all these movies for a reason. They are so strong thematically, just in every way, actually. Like, everything about them is so strong. The characters are all so different, so morally conflicted by the situations that they are put in because of this corrupt government. So you will learn so much from all the different characters. I mean, Peter and Katniss could not be more different from each other, but both equally brilliant. And then obviously, because it is dystopian, it's inherently political, and there's a ton of social commentary that's relevant now and relevant when it was written. Suzanne Collins has said that she was inspired by the Vietnam War, she was inspired by Iraq as well, and she's still writing now, so she's probably also inspired by the conflicts that are happening all over the world at the minute. Because of that, they just teach you about the horrors of fascism, right-wing governments, totalitarian governments. Must reads, just absolute must reads. My copy of this is in my family home, but The Perks of Being a Wallflower is probably, maybe along with Looking for Alaska, in my opinion, the best coming of age story written that I have read in the YA space. Oh, just so sad, but so brilliant. This one does kind of have a reveal or a twist, so I won't talk about it too much, but it's essentially about a teenage boy who, again, is a little bit outcast, lonely, going through his high school years when he meets a group of friends that sort of open him up and allow him to share his vulnerabilities and look at the things he's gone through and sort of accept them and then move on from them and start to heal. It's just a brilliant, brilliant book, and it stayed with me forever, and I've only read it once because of how heartbreaking it was, but it is definitely a must read. Just Listen by Sarah Dessen. Again, this book is in my family home right now. I still have it. I've actually read every single book by Sarah Dessen, even her one that came out last year. I'm a lifelong stan at this point, but these books by her were particularly pivotal in my teenage years. Like Just Listen, The Truth About Forever, Along for the Ride, which you might know is a Netflix film, all crucial in my development and reflection as a teen. Just Listen in particular, I think, is a really, really key book to read as a teenager because it deals with a lot of heavy themes, SA, EDs, family dynamics that are complex, romantic relationships and first loves. It's dark in places for a YA book, but so impactful, and again made those themes like SA and EDs a little bit more understandable to my teenage brain at the time. So if you are like in your YA reading era, she is an author to check out. You know, she's big for a reason, she's been adapted for a reason. Rounding off the YA section with The Grace Year, which is a 6-star read for me, and I read this either in 2024 or 2023, so pretty recently for saying it's a YA book. Now, this is definitely your kind of common themes of misogyny, fighting the patriarchy, women's rights, but it's still really hard-hitting because the way it's approached is quite dark for a YA book. There's definitely some gruesome and some harrowing bits in this, but it follows Tierney, who lives in this sort of religious, kind of dystopian society where every year a group of 15-year-old girls are told to go off on their grace year, which is this magical experience where they must get rid of their magic. and it's basically not what they think. In the past, family members, friends come back completely different physically and mentally. And so Tierney is going on her grace year, and you see what it actually is. It's great. It reminds me of Lord of the Flies, you know, a bit of the Maze Runner kind of, Handmaid's Tale, but again, YA. But the ending threw me for a loop, had me absolutely sobbing. You will either love or hate this, I think, because when I looked at the reviews when I finished it, it was very 50-50 mixed. For me personally, it was really impactful. Okay, moving on to books that fit in sort of your literary, contemporary, speculative fiction area, which there's actually the most books that fit into this genre than any other in this video, which is surprising because this is a genre I read the least. But I think it's like when you get a really good one, they are out of this world good. First one is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I read this in 2019 and I was in my early 20s or mid to early 20s, and I had spent years kind of going through this on again, off again relationship, and I'd left uni and I just felt a bit out of sorts. This kind of explains and sums up that experience perfectly. There's themes of women's sexuality, men's mental health, domestic violence, and it is a super tiny book. And overall, it kind of follows these two teenagers who just keep coming back together romantically throughout the years as they go to college and uni, even though they're from completely different upbringings and backgrounds. You know, one is a working class single parent household, the other is a very middle class 2-parent, 2 kids household, but things are not always what they seem. It definitely has a lot of miscommunication, but I actually love the miscommunication in this because it's so relatable. And yeah, it just really changed the way I looked at kind of toxic or codependent relationships. Okay, next one is same author but different book. Whoa. As I was saying, same author, different book, obviously. I actually wanted to include all of Sally Rooney's books in this video, but then I thought I'll spare you from going through her entire, you know, catalogue. You can just take that as a little nugget of information. I personally think all of her books are worth reading before you turn 30. But Normal People and Intermezzo specifically, because Intermezzo is all about grief, and not just the grief of losing a loved one, grief for the life you might have once lived, grief for a past relationship. It's all about subverting modern expectations as well and choosing a life that suits you most. It also has a lot of political and social commentary, and I think this is Sally's best book. Maybe Normal People is slightly more my favourite because of my personal experience with that book, but this is her best book objectively. The Kite Runner. Again, this physical copy is at my parents' house because it was so devastating and heartbreaking that I will never read it again, but I read it 10 years ago, maybe more. I honestly cannot even remember properly what this book is about. I just remember that it details someone's past experience, but it was just a very reflective, heartbreaking tale that has a lot of like historical and cultural accuracy as well. I've never gone on to 1,000 Splendid Suns by the same author because I just don't know if I can handle that heartbreak again. I won't say more than that, but it's an absolute must read. Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. This is definitely an author to read if you already like Sally Rooney. I actually did this on audio and I definitely recommend doing it that way as well because the narration is great. Again, this is about grief. It follows 3 sisters whose 4th sister has just died. And so it has these 3 different sisters navigating loss as well as their other personal life issues that we all have, from addiction to relationship problems, career stagnation, just all different things. And also then throws in how sisterhood can be such a complex relationship dynamic at the best of times. It's not that big, it's a standalone, but I really enjoyed this and I related to it heavily as someone that does have a sister, so I definitely think this is another one that's good to read when you're in your 20s and life is a bit complicated. Chain Gang All Stars. Now this is kind of like the Hunger Games for adults, and instead of just being a generalized commentary on society as a whole and on governments as a whole, it's specifically about prison, the prison system in the US, and racism. Now I gave this 3 stars. However, I am including it because I've not actually seen anyone else rate it as low as I have out of my mutuals and stuff. Most people give this 5 stars. I think for me, I was already well aware of the themes in this book. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about. I've probably watched every jail and prison documentary out there, and I already take the time to educate myself on racism. So the themes maybe didn't hit me as hard as it might for someone else, but it's definitely still an incredible book to read, and I can really see why people love it. Definitely give it a read. I Who Have Never Known Man. I gave my copy to my sister because she absolutely loved this book. Like, this for her was one of the best books ever. I still also really enjoyed it, but not as much as her. This is like speculative fiction, essentially about 50 women that wake up, and when they wake up they're in a prison underground. They don't really know why, they don't know what's happening above the world. One day they escape and they're free, and they're just like in this barren land, and they have no idea what's happened to them, what's happened to the world. It's very bleak, I will forewarn, but it is so thought-provoking. Like I said, it's speculative fiction, but it also kind of leans into dystopian a little bit, and there's some elements that almost gave me Handmaid's Tale a little bit too. It definitely looks at kind of decision-making, leadership, sisterhood, just a lot of different things. Honestly, for such a tiny book, it is another one that's super impactful, and yeah, will just make you question things about the world as we know it and what you would do if you were in that scenario. Everything You Ever Wanted, another one that is kind of speculative fiction, part dystopian, part sci-fi, super tiny, super impactful. This was a 5-6 star read for me. I think about this all the time. Follows a young woman who is a bit despondent with her current life. You know, she has the 9 to 5, she lives in London, but every day's the same and she's depressed. One day she hears about this program called Life on Nyx, which is essentially a program where you go to another planet and you set up life there, and it's documented as reality TV. And so she decides to sign up for the program. This is another one that is just so thought-provoking. Definitely kind of makes you think about your own life, about how you become happy with the mundane and content. It also has a slightly the grass is not always greener feeling to it, and looks at familial relationships quite heavily as well. Super ambiguous ending, I will forewarn in case you don't like that kind of a thing, but again, super thought-provoking. Horror. I only have one book for this section, this genre, because I don't actually read much horror. Maybe that should change though, because the horror books that I do have on my Goodreads have all been minimum 4.5 stars. So maybe I should read more horror, but the one I'm going to talk about is Tender as the Flesh. This is a phenomenal book. Everything from the writing to the messaging to the flow. I was already super passionate about what this book is exploring and trying to talk about, but it still was a 5-star read for me and still super impactful. There was also a kind of a twist in it that I didn't really see coming, so it just shocked me to my core, and it's super harrowing, super gruesome, definitely not an easy read, but something that will make you think about food, the way we consume food, and society and its obsession with violence as a whole. Moving on to romance, and starting off strong with my favourite romance author, who is Emily Henry, and this is Beach Read. This is actually kind of like the contemporary romance version of Intermezzo, because it's all about grief again. Obviously there is a romance aside from the grief, but for me, what actually made this book so strong was the main character's plot outside of the romance. There is a plot that follows her relationship with her father, and I think if you have a complex relationship with your parents, this is a great one to read. Or if you've lost someone, this is a great one to read. Or if someone in your family has kind of revealed themselves not to be as perfect as you once thought they were, great one to read. The romance is also just amazing. It's not necessarily something that's going to teach you anything. It's the things outside of the romance that make this book so impactful. The Deal by Elle Kennedy. If you're in your early 20s, late teens, you're going to college, you're going to uni, you started going out a lot, this is a read for you, because one of the things that happens when you start going out, start drinking, start partying, is you inevitably become more susceptible to horrible situations. Unfortunately, that is just the way it is. So this book is kind of about that. Actually, something happens to our main character at a party, essay, unfortunately, and it kind of follows her healing journey as she tries to have a relationship again despite what has happened to her. I thought the way that this book handled essay was brilliant, and I really also liked how the secondary plot has domestic violence, and then we also in the actual romance have two people from completely different sectors and groups who shouldn't really like each other find that judging a book by its cover is not a great way to make relationships, and actually people will surprise you and be completely different to the stereotype you might think they're a part of. So all around, this book is really impactful and emotional. It's definitely the book that got me into sports romance as well, which I never thought I'd ever be interested in. It's good, okay? Trust me. Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. I didn't know whether to include this one because Jessa has been a bit problematic recently. She's talked about how she supports the use of AI. She uses it when she's researching in her books. She defended a creator who had done some questionable things. So I haven't been talking about her as much or talking about her books as much, but this book really did impact me. And so I just thought, if I give you that disclaimer about the type of person that she currently is, you can always buy it secondhand if you don't want to support her, and you can always go and look it up and research for yourself. So now that that's out of the way, the actual book is a standalone romance, contemporary fiction. It's a bit like Emily Henry, where it has a lot of plot outside of the actual romance, and the plot outside of the romance is very strong and very impactful. This one in particular deals with a girl who comes from a very conservative state in America, and she has to go back there when she gets the news that her dad has died and see this horrible family that she hates. It definitely deals with toxic family relationships, narcissists, things like that. It also has themes about addiction, and there's a lot of discussion about religion and what that means to our character. And I just found the religion section super interesting and made me think about my own spiritual beliefs. And yeah, there's just loads of stuff going on in this. I don't want to spoil too much because there is stuff to be unraveled. You might want to check trigger warnings for this one. 7 Days in June by Tia Williams, a beautiful, beautiful second chance romance story that also looks at racism, chronic illness, being a single parent, all sorts of stuff. It's split between the past and the present. It unravels the lives of two teenagers who are in complex situations themselves individually, and then comes back to present where their lives are completely different. They're no longer in touch, but there's tons of impactful things in here. And if nothing else, this will teach you about the realities of chronic illness so that you can be a better friend or family member to someone who has chronic illness themselves, because it is a difficult thing to deal with. Happy Place, which is my favourite romance book of all time. 6-star read. Emily Henry is an absolute queen. We've already talked about Beach Read, but this one is also really poignant and very relatable to your life if you're in your 20s and you're at that phase of life where your friends all have completely different lifestyles and things going on. When you're in your 20s, there's such a big range of things that can happen to you in your life. People can be having kids and getting married at the same time as another friend is just going to uni or just starting their career, and this really explores that because that is a difficult thing to navigate. It also has a second chance romance story, and I think this really helps determine when second chances are the right thing or not. It's not always the right thing to do, it's not always a bad thing to do either, and this kind of looks at that. Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez has the best depiction of both chronic illness and anxiety that I've ever read. If you have anxiety and your anxiety manifests in social situations or relationships, you have to read this book. You will relate to it so much. And equally, if you have a severe chronic illness or a health condition that impacts your day-to-day life, or someone around you does have that, a must read. The main character's brother in this is going through kidney failure, and it's so well researched and so well depicted because Abby Jimenez said in the author's note at the back, it's actually something she's gone through herself. So this book is just, again, it's romance, but it's so much more than just a love story between two people. It was an absolute 5-star read for me. Loved it. It also makes you think about starting over your life. Some people in their 20s or the 30s change everything, whether that be a marriage breakdown has occurred, you change careers, just, you know, a lot of times for people, life doesn't go the way we think and we need to reevaluate and restart. And this book looks at that because our main character is completely changing her life. She's been through some really horrible things and now she's starting over again. And it's just such a beautiful journey and a beautiful book. Moving on to fantasy and paranormal books in that sort of a space, we're starting with A Dowry of Blood. Not everyone is born a strong person. Some people have to teach themselves to be strong, and this book is kind of about that. Our main character is submissive at the start of the book. She is sort of manipulated and gaslighted into this toxic relationship, and so that in itself is quite an important theme to look at through books. You know, many of us in our teens or our 20s go through some bad relationships. The back of the book says a powerful tale of possession and liberation, and I can't think of a better way to describe it. It's definitely about a woman learning to stand up for herself. On top of that, it has this beautiful prose, like the most stunning writing I've ever read. And it also has like a found family element too. It's just kind of like the most stunning gothic romance that also has themes of self-identity and loving yourself. Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang. This is my current favourite book of this year so far out of all of the 46 books I've read. Absolutely incredible. This is a standalone dark academia fantasy book. It's literally got every theme you could think of in it. Misogyny, oppression, colonialism, racism, classism, like everything, but it's talked about and incorporated into the story into such an accessible and digestible way. It's not like the author is like shoving messaging down your throat. It's just a story that encapsulates those themes so beautifully and wonderfully. I literally cried on page 9, and I'm not even a crier. There's just something about the way she writes the characters and the strife that they are going through that is emotionally impactful before you've even had chance to connect with the character. Absolutely a must read. Same author, different book. This is The Sword of Kaigan. Definitely more of a traditional military, historical based fantasy inspired by Japan and Korea. This is an absolutely amazing fantasy book. It is a standalone. It was originally part of a series, but the series got discontinued, but it's still so hard hitting. It follows Misaki, who is the matriarch of a family that is the guardian, magical guardians of this mountain that they live on. It also has a POV from her 14-year-old son. That in itself is so unique, and we get such different perspectives on what's happening around them. But to have a main character, you know, who is a mother of 4, she's in a marriage that she is not happy in, she is defined by the patriarchy, and she's morally grey, let's just say that. There's times when you won't necessarily agree with what she's doing or what she's done or the type of person that she is, but it kind of shows the realities of motherhood and the patriarchy and what that does to women. This is a very triggering book in terms of this graphic essay, so just be warned about that. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, again, another, you know, super famous, well-loved book. If you haven't read it, you need to read it because it's all about the choices that we make and the consequences that they have. It's about what's important in life and the connections that we make with people and how impactful and long-lasting those can be. Addie is definitely a very different female main character. She's so unique and distinct, and I remember like everything about this book, every plot point, which doesn't happen very often, but it's just such an original and unique story. It's also like the definition of yearning, if that interests you. But overall, just the choices and the consequences of Addie's actions, without giving too much away, make this a really unique and unforgettable book. Medea by Rosie Hewlett is Greek mythology all about Medea. If you have read Circe by Madeline Miller, this is very similar, and I was going to include that one too, but since that one's a little bit more famous than Medea, I thought I'd go with this one. It kind of almost feels like it's the same author and it's a carry-on because of the chronological timeline of the Greek mythology, but it is a different author. I actually did this on audio as well, which I would 10 out of 10 recommend. The audio is so brilliant for this. The reason I think that this is one that people should read before they turn 30 is because it embodies feminine rage so well. And again, it definitely looks at the way women are treated and toxic relationships, the way that we are gaslighted. It's just a very poignant retelling of Greek mythology with feminine rage that looks at how a man's actions might define us. Medea is such a complicated character, but you cannot help but feel empathy towards her and understand how she ends up the way that she does. A Sea of Unspoken Things is kind of a fusion of many different genres. Slight paranormal, mystery, crime, romance, just a bit of everything, and that's what makes it so special. It's definitely a fusion of genres. I love Adrian's books in general. A Sea of Unspoken Things, Spells for Forgetting, and The Unmaking of June Farrow have all been like 5-star, 6-star reads for me. Absolutely love her. She's an auto-buy author. But this one specifically taught me about small town life and the dynamics within it, because as someone that lives in a capital city, I could not relate to this life very much because I just haven't experienced these things, and the way it looks at human connections and the limitations that people put on you who have known you your whole life and expect certain things of you, it was just very, very poignant. It also looks at the relationship between twins, which is something I can't relate to, and family relationships obviously as a whole, definitely also a core theme of grief, and then a subplot of second chance romance. So all round, it's quite an emotional, poignant book. It's also very atmospheric, super tiny, standalone, so you can fly through it, but really packs a punch for how small it is. And now we come to my last book of the video, the 30th book, which is actually non-fiction, and that is Into the Wild. You may have seen the film, you may know a bit about what it's about. It is a biography that follows the journey of a man called Chris McCandless. Chris decided to essentially sell all of his belongings when he graduated uni in America and embark on this great journey across the Alaskan wilderness. He was disillusioned with life, disillusioned with capitalism, and decided, he just wanted to do something entirely different to what his parents and society expected of him. The only thing is he was new to this sort of Alaskan wilderness, and could be said that he embarked on this journey with an air of arrogance. He didn't foresee how difficult it would really be. But as we follow him on this journey, we do learn about the connections he makes along the way and the way it impacted him. He kept a diary while he was on this journey, so we get insight into his psyche before the ending, which, just in case you haven't read it, I won't tell you the ending, but essentially it's not a very happy one. But this book is so impactful because it's all about a man who wants to shirk what is expected of him and society's expectations, but at the same time it's like, is that actually possible? Can we actually do that? What are the important things in life? How do we go about finding them? How do we go about becoming content and happy? Can we live fully off grid? Can we live without help from others? The film is also great. The soundtrack's by Eddie Vedder, so that's unreal. All round, just a really thought-provoking story. Not even just a story, just actual life. But yeah, that is my 30 books to read before you turn 30. If you've read any of those and they were impactful to you, let me know. Or if there's others that you think I should read, please let me know in the comments below. I'm always looking for more books that just completely change my outlook on life or myself. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you next Monday for another video, by which time I will be 30. Yikes. But until then, I hope you have a great week. Bye.